All right. Well, what is up, everyone? My name is Chris. Today, this is going to be a fun video. I'm here with Yariv Wolok, the founder of Flyers Nitty Gritty. I talk with Yariv a lot, and I posted this on my Instagram, I'd say about a week or so ago. We were going to be breaking down the defense from the last few seasons, 2018-19 versus 2019-20. Yariv, what's up, my man? How are you?
Doing well, buddy. Thanks for inviting me. Obviously, we've been talking about this topic for a little bit, kind of
Mhm.
in the background. Um, let's say I would think everybody knows the ending of this story, but I think it's cool to talk about, how the Flyers got to this point.
Yeah, definitely. This topic has a couple things that come to my mind. I think realistically, there's three takeaways that come off of this. And starting off with the first one, I think the biggest thing is the talent. Like from comparing last year to this year. So I'm just going to read off the names here from each year. So starting out with 18-19, all the defensemen that played, there was 8 in total. You got Shane Gostisbehere, Robert Hagg, Ivan Provorov, Radko Gudas, Travis Sanheim, Felipe Myers, Andrew McDonald, Christian Folan, Sam Morin, and Mark Freeman. And some of these guys didn't play that too many games. Myers only played 21 games, came in later into the season. Christian Folan played 26. Freeman only played 1 game, and Sam Morin played 5. I think realistically, I think the biggest thing out of this is obviously there's no Gudas anymore, no Christian Folan, no Andrew McDonald. Yeah, and really we saw no really there was
Boo-hoo.
nothing of yes Sam Morin. He sadly got injured, and then Mark Freeman, he only played a handful of games for the Flyers this season. But honestly, I mean, comparing it to 2019-20, which is Provorov, Niskanen, Travis Sanheim, Myers, Hag, Justin Braun, Gossis, Barrett, and Freeman, that's a lot better talent-wise. And I think that changed it. That was the biggest. I think that was the biggest change for the defense.
Yeah, I mean, just from night and day, I think we'll probably talk about the trades, but I mean, just
Hmm.
right off the bat, replacing Gudis and Matt Niskanen. I mean, if that would have been the only move that the Flyers made on the back end this season, that alone, I think, completely changed the dynamic of the team. Where before you had somebody like Amac playing in that role, which, again, I know everybody likes to pick on Amac. It's really easy to pick on Amac because he was obviously overpriced, slightly undersized, and underperformed for his cost and everything we gave up to get him here. And yes, he has all the intangibles. I think he definitely had intangibles without a doubt. But just that basis alone, where like Amac is really more of a comparison to Gudis than he
Yeah.
was somebody like Niskanen, where he's a bottom pairing defenseman. And Niskanen, is that a guy who, at the peak of his career, and I would say maybe he's even still there now, is a top pairing defenseman, a complementary top pairing, but somebody at least as good as Braden Coburn. We talked about that the other day,
Yeah.
where it's a guy overall who can eat up a lot of minutes and play against the best players in the world. That alone, I think, was a game changer.
Yeah, definitely. And honestly, I think the biggest thing about that too was just how everyone kind of like, I guess you could say realistically, they kind of shit on Niskanen in the beginning, and it was kind of just like it kind of just took everything away from him. Then he kind of just wowed everyone because I told you this the other day. I was looking at the comments on my video about the trade with Niskanen for Gudis, and someone had decided to comment like this like 6 paragraph like big thing about how the trade was bad, and I'm looking at it, I'm like, and I just stopped reading in the middle of it. I was like, man, like this comment did not this didn't age well. It was just
Right, right.
Niskanen was just really good the whole season. And to be honest with you, kind of getting into like the second takeaway here, I honestly think the structure and the coaching of it, right? Because the Flyers, they bring in Mike Yo, and as a head coach, it wasn't great. As an assistant coach, that's pretty good. And I think he made a lot of different moves that helped out the defense this season. And that was more so on the penalty kill as well. And honestly, I think that might have been one of the biggest reasons why the Flyers struggled last season. Their special teams wasn't great. Honestly, I think if their special teams was in the middle of the pack, they probably could have been at least a better team, might have made the playoffs, you can say. But a lot of things went wrong last season. Obviously, injuries was the biggest thing. They used 8 goaltenders. And realistically, they just could not play defense to save their lives. Compared to this season, where they're solid on the puck, they move it quick, they're puck moving. And honestly, I think the biggest thing about it is that all these guys kind of fit the mold well to where they haven't had this in a while. Where like Niskanen makes Provorov better because Provorov can join the rush now because he knows Niskanen's behind him.
Right.
Braun, I think, makes Hag better because he has another guy with him. Where if Hag messes up, you have a solid defenseman with Braun back there. And really same thing with Sanheim and Myers. They're two young defensemen that can move the puck out of their zone. They're both pretty poised enough where they can join the rush, but also know when to move the puck and stay back. So I think it all kind of just comes together and really helps out the team in general.
Sure. Yeah, it's almost like a trickle down effect, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
if Niskanen can now handle those minutes where nobody was capable of handling those minutes outside of Provorov last year, I mean, that alone has a huge trickle down effect, right? Like everybody thought Gudas had this exceptional season. I'll go back to your first point. I mean, he had a really good season for what he does, which is a bottom pairing defenseman in the NHL, plays physically, get the puck out of his own zone. It can contribute every now and then offensively, kind of like Robert Haig in a lot of ways, right? It's
Yeah.
a very similar type of player. But you put a guy like Niskanen in his proper role, one that he's used to carrying. I mean, it allows everybody else to kind of take that weight off their shoulders. And I think, honestly, I think people get too wrapped up into what happens in one season. I mean, like, how many times did Patrick Kane come out exploding onto the scene and then had maybe an off year the next year, and all of a sudden they stopped talking about it? Nikita Kucherov goes from being the best player in the world to everybody's like, oh yeah, he's pretty good. He's a really good player. It's just like that people tend to fluctuate their opinions based on what happened in the season before. And I really think we need to move away from that because statistics, they really do not tell the whole story, and neither the analytics, and none of that really does. And if you really look at Niskanen's game, there should have been no anticipation that he was anything but what he was. And if you look at players who really watched him outside of a couple struggling numbers, I mean, I don't know what people were looking at that got to that point. I guess just a reduction in numbers, but statistics.
Yeah,
I think it was
exactly.
statistical analysis. It's a mistake. Go ahead.
Yeah, because he kind of had a rough season there with the Caps last year, and everyone was like, "Oh, he's not that great anymore." And it's just like, well, he hasn't even stepped on the ice yet. You're not really giving him a chance. But,
well, he had more of a history of being really good than he did struggling. Mm-hmm. So it's actually a small portion of his career that he didn't do well. One season is not a reflection of his career or his time played.
Yeah, exactly.
And actually, your Mike Yeo point as well. I mean, you look at what Mike Yeo got to, right? It's him and Berube were both backups, right? I'm sorry, Berube was his backup. He made that mistake. Berube came in. Berube was fired in a similar type of situation himself, right? So there's nobody should assume that Mike Yeo is not going to get another chance to be a head coach somewhere. And we should be aware of that the success that both Yeo and Terrian have shown for the Flyers, I mean, that makes them at risk to leave at the same time because they've been good coaches. So something to consider, that just because they didn't do well in one situation doesn't mean they wouldn't do it well in another.
Yeah, exactly. And honestly, I feel like that was the biggest thing. It was like, because everyone looked at Terrian when he left Pittsburgh, and they were like, "Oh, he's not going to do good in Montreal," and he was pretty good in Montreal. Same thing when he came here. He didn't do that great in Montreal, and he's not going to do good in Philly. Well, it's different, you know. And honestly, I think the biggest thing behind it too was the way Alain Vigneault was too. I think that kind of helped the other two kind of mold together. Yeah.
Without a doubt, he's huge. Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's all right. And one thing I wanted to bring up too was kind of just. It's not so much just like talent, the structure, coaching, everything. It's honestly just the way that they play better defensively. And it's not even so much the defensemen. I think the forwards are now better defensively as well. I feel like Scott Lawton's been very good defensively. And these are just guys off the top of my head. I could probably go on and on. I think Travis Konecny's been really good defensively. And I said that before to people who've been watching me for a while. You know, I didn't think TK had a great defensive season last year. Sometimes it looked like he was kind of just throwing the puck into a random area. This season, he kind of lifts his head up, he knows where to put the puck in better situations, and look at his offensive production now. So I think more it's just the team has transitioned from defense to offense, from, the forwards to the defense, and it's helped out completely.
100, man, 100%. If you think about it, defense does not start in the defensive zone. I mean, it's just not true. It's like, again, all those times that, again, we'll go back and I'll defend AMAC again. I mean, that while he was not in a position for him to be in, and I would agree, he was not good enough to be playing those minutes. At the same time, the team defense around him was not good.
No.
Not good. And you can blame that on a combination of things, but that those records alone, I mean, I'm sure you're going to go through it a little bit later, but 26th in the NHL and penalty
Yeah.
kill. You're telling me that's Amac's fault?
Hmm.
That's one player's fault? I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Like, it's not one player's fault. This was a team-wide issue. I would actually argue for maybe 7 or 8 years
Yeah.
already. Now, maybe it's a little bit long, but for a half of this decade, this team played atrocious defense. And for the first time in a long time, team defense, where even Travis Konechny looks like a good defensive player, that is
Hmm.
commitment to defense all around. I totally agree.
Yeah, exactly. And honestly, I think and as I said, like it expands. I mean, Kevin Hayes phenomenal on defense. I think Jake
Yep.
Voracek's play better. James Van
Yep.
Riemsdyk. I mean, you can go on and on. And these are wingers I'm naming here. I mean, like
Farabee.
yeah, Joel Farabee, who's technically he reminds me of a center that plays wing. So it's just like it's just another defensive kind of thing there. And as you said, as you brought up the penalty kill, that was my third takeaway, the PK. As you said, 26 in the NHL in 18-19, 11th in 2019-20. Now it had its ups and downs at some points, but it wasn't long. It was maybe a couple games, and it was right back to playing really good again. It was phenomenal at home, like the Flyers were really all season, and it's nothing against them playing on the them playing on the road, but 81.8% compared to last year, 78.5. So it's a completely different penalty kill. I think they're more structured at the blue line. They are like, it seems like every time they have two guys pressuring right there at the blue line, and then they're forced to go back. And if it doesn't happen, they're still aggressive enough where they can get the puck out. And honestly, I can't remember a stretch where Flyers fans were just like, what is wrong with the penalty kill? I can't remember it. Now the power play, that's different. Yeah, obviously you know how the power play's been in recent years. We've looked at it like it's the power play, whatever. But I think there honestly wasn't many times this season where we looked at the PK and said like, what the hell is happening right now? Because I feel like the PK was good enough where it was, even if it wasn't, perfect, it was still good enough where they could kill it and then get momentum from that and then just continue throughout the whole game and end up winning.
Absolutely. And I would love to see a statistical analysis of this because I haven't done it personally. And it's not that this really ultimately matters because the season, every game matters, every struggle you go through matters. It is a reflection of your team, regardless of excuses. But around that time where Oscar Lindblom was diagnosed with cancer, you
Yeah.
saw a complete change in play in the team for the worst. And everybody's like, oh, great. Like now things are falling apart again.
Hmm.
But because this is not that team that everybody thought, they rebounded. But I would imagine a big drop in our defensive game and those numbers, the offensive output. I think it was like a 6-7 game span. And mind you, we didn't finish the season either, right?
Yeah.
That we watched all of our statistics kind of drop. And then everybody's like, oh, we were worried that we weren't that team we thought we were. But
Hmm.
then they rebounded and everything went up. And if you really look at the second half of this season,
Oh, they're
again, the
phenomenal.
whole season matters, right? But the stats of the second half of the season far superior. And you figure the beginning is when they're learning how to play their system. They're going through all those problems. They deal with the Nolan Patrick news, the Oscar Lindblom news, and then they start uniting as a team, right? All of a sudden, you get their Grant in at the end of the year to fill that role of Oscar Lindblom leaving. Obviously some key losses. That's huge.
Yeah.
And I think overall, it's where this team is trending. And I would not be surprised if next year the special teams overall will both be in the top 10. And if that is the case, you're looking at a real contender, and it's usually a good sign of a contenders, a team that can take advantage of those opportunistic moments of penalty kill, power play, penalty kill. Obviously, you're down, but if you can hold the line on a penalty kill, there's a really really good sign because that is a reflection of being able to play under pressure and be able to stick to the game plan, which is what wins in the playoffs, quite frankly.
Yeah, exactly, and I agree with that to a T. I honestly think you hit it perfectly, and I think realistically, I think the biggest thing too is that the Flyers are now able, like this team has, like they have rookies that are playing like that. They're like 5, 6 year veterans. I mean, like not even just on defense, on the offensive side too. I mean, I think this might be one of the best towards the end of that stretch there. I think Phil Myers was really starting to hit it because obviously we all saw you saw too how he kind of was with Sanheim. Struggled a little bit. He was on and off. And then they started to get really, really good. And then obviously, sadly, the season ended up shutting down. But I think that pairing right there was too good to where they ended up having to put Justin Braun on the third pair. So it was just it made everything better, I think, really for the defense.
Yeah, and that's not something we were able to get away with last year.
Hmm.
Like you weren't, and I even remember people being really nervous about the idea of Sanheim and Myers playing together and Ghost and Myers playing together. I heard that consistently, and all
Yeah.
I saw was it working. I
Yeah.
didn't see anything that people were talking about.
Yeah.
Um, that's a reflection on the system and the coaching because putting kids in that position, there's room for failure there. I understand why people say what they do, but it's more of an anticipation statement more than it is a reflection of actually what's happening on the ice, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because all defensemen make mistakes. I mean, you were to tell me that our veteran defensemen don't make mistakes. It's just absolutely not true. 95% of defensemen are completely mistake prone, and that 5% that aren't are usually like elite guys in the NHL. We're not even talking about guys who swing in and out or young players. It's like majority of players are making mistakes all the time. So it's really about their ability to recover. And when you have guys like Sanheim and Myers, try to make them not recover. Like how they're going to catch you. You get around
Oh
them,
yeah.
Myers or Sanheim, they're going to catch you on the back check.
Hmm.
And they're both big and strong. So it's that ability to make up for those mistakes as well. And again, it's kind of what we're talking about. With Niskanen able to play those tough minutes, it makes it easier for everybody else. I
Yeah.
feel like, and then Braun's ability to play those tough minutes, especially inside the defensive zone, because he's so physical, so good with his stick, so good at shot blocking, where he really is a much better version of Andrew McDonald.
Yeah.
That's what this team needed, and you understand why the Flyers went out and got these guys, and how much it helped the young guys too.
Yeah, exactly. So again, Yariv, I thank you for coming on, man. I enjoyed this one. It was definitely fun breaking down the way that how the team could barely play defense last year to a team that was like phenomenal in their own zone this year. But again, man, I thank you for coming on.
Happy to be here. Maybe next time we'll do the offense. Maybe next time we'll do the goaltending. So much
Yeah.
to break down. If
Oh, I
you really
know.
think about it, the amount of change that we saw in 1 year,
Yeah.
not just from the product on the ice, but just the inside the organization and how it materialized. It was really interesting to see, and it's something I think everybody should learn from, and what the recipe really is to build a winning organization. And where Hextall fell short, even though he was, in my opinion, a great GM at
Yeah.
building a team, but he fell short there at the end for whatever reason. I still think he'll get another chance, and he's a very smart man, and I want to see him get another chance.
I'm
But there's
100%
a
agree.
lot to it. There's
Yeah.
a lot to this, so just interesting to see. Love the experience. Thanks for having me on, man.
Yeah, no
Totally willing
problem.
to do it again. And, always enjoy talking to you about everything Flyers.
Thanks, man. All right, guys. Remember, podcast articles, those links are on the About section of my channel, and I will catch you all again soon.